On the afternoon of August 8, 1969, Sharon Tate, a rising star in Hollywood, stood before a camera, her warm smile lighting up the frame. It was just a few hours before the unthinkable tragedy that would forever mark her place in history, and that moment, captured in the photo, was full of innocence, joy, and hope. The image of Sharon, with her soft, radiant beauty, spoke of a life that was just beginning to unfold, a life that was filled with dreams of a bright future ahead. In the photo, she seemed at peace, unaware that her world was about to come crashing down in the most unimaginable way. The photo became more than just a memory of her vibrant life, it became a haunting reminder of everything that was lost. Sharon Tate, known for her roles in films like Valley of the Dolls and The Fearless Vampire Killers, was more than just a pretty face on the silver screen. She had a depth to her, a creative spirit, and an undeniable charm that made her stand out not just as an actress, but as a person. Married to the acclaimed director Roman Polanski, she was living a life many envied. They had recently moved into the iconic home on Cielo Drive, a beautiful secluded place in Los Angeles, where they could begin their new chapter as a couple. Sharon at the time was also pregnant with their child, and she was eagerly awaiting the arrival of their baby. But this photo, this seemingly ordinary moment, would soon be overshadowed by something horrific. Sharon was surrounded by her friends, including her former boyfriend, hairstylist Jay Sebring, Abigail Folger, the heiress to the Folger coffee fortune, and her partner Wojciech Frykowski, at their home that evening. They had no idea that the horror that had been silently creeping through the air that summer night would soon arrive at their doorstep. That evening, a group of Manson family followers, led by Charles Manson, arrived at the house with a deadly plan. The lives of Sharon and her friends were about to be violently taken away, forever altering the course of Hollywood history. The photo of Sharon, taken only hours before the brutal murders, now serves as a chilling reminder of how quickly life can change. It was as if fate had written a tragic script for her, where one moment she was smiling for a photograph, and in the next her life would be stolen away. The photo itself is not just an image, it's an eerie time capsule of innocence, a frozen moment before everything spiraled into darkness. Sharon, who had once been full of hope, now represents the lost potential of a life that was never allowed to fully unfold. It's haunting because, looking at the photo, we see someone with dreams, someone who didn't know that just hours later, her life would be brutally taken. The world had not yet heard of the Manson family, or the horror that they would bring. To those around Sharon, her death would come as a devastating blow, one that shattered their sense of safety and security, in a world that suddenly seemed much darker and more dangerous. The silence of that photo, capturing her serene expression, is contrasted with the violence of the murder that would soon follow. It's as if that photo somehow tells a story that we will never fully understand, a story that makes us wonder what might have been. What would Sharon Tate have become had she lived? What kind of impact would she have had on Hollywood and the world? The photo pulls at the heartstrings, begging for answers to questions that will never be answered. It's a tragic irony too, because Sharon had been on the verge of something big. Her career was growing, and she had just completed filming Rosemary's Baby, a film that would cement her place in cinematic history. She was no longer just a pretty actress in the background, but someone with the potential to be an icon, someone whose star was rising. She had dreams beyond the screen. She wanted to be a mother, a wife, and a force in the world. But all of that was taken away in a senseless act of violence. Sharon's life was cut short, and the story of that moment in time, captured in a photo, has become a haunting symbol of what was lost. Every time we see that photo, we are reminded not only of the tragedy, but also of the innocence that Sharon represented. It's almost as if she was too good for the world she inhabited, a world that turned on her in an instant, ending a life filled with promise. The question lingers in the air: why her? Why did this tragedy have to happen to someone so full of life and love? And yet this haunting photo speaks volumes, without uttering a word. It's a moment frozen in time, a visual representation of what could have been. It forces us to confront the fragility of life, to remind us how quickly everything can change. What Sharon Tate represented in that photo, hope, love, beauty, and promise, is now marred by the horror that followed. But that photo will always remain, as a reminder of a life stolen too soon, and a legacy left behind in the wake of that tragic event. It's a chilling, haunting reminder that life is fleeting, And sometimes, the moments we least expect are the ones that hold the most weight. Sharon Tate's photo taken hours before her death will forever be a symbol of innocence lost, a snapshot of a life that will never be fully realized. It leaves us to wonder, what might have been if that tragic night had never happened? The day had started like any other for Sharon Tate. She was living her life, pregnant and excited about the future, with everything seemingly in place. In the hours leading up to the photo, Sharon had been preparing for what was meant to be a peaceful evening in the comfort of her home. She had no idea, of course, that her world was about to be turned upside down by a brutal, horrifying event that would make her a symbol of innocence lost forever. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the evening air seemed to carry an unusual tension. Sharon, smiling brightly in the photo, appeared to be enjoying a calm, ordinary day, unaware that in a few short hours, she would become one of the most tragic figures in American history. What's most eerie about this image is the contrast between Sharon's peaceful demeanor and the unimaginable horror that was about to unfold. The photo showed her standing in front of a camera, possibly surrounded by friends or loved ones, giving off the impression of a carefree moment, filled with laughter and light. But in the back of her mind, the impending threat was silently approaching, waiting to strike. The Manson family members, who had been terrorizing the outskirts of Los Angeles, were plotting the most devastating crime the city had ever seen. They had no reason to target Sharon Tate, a woman who was far removed from their twisted ideals, but the inexplicable tragedy of that night was exactly what would make her death resonate for generations. The photograph, captured in those final moments of serenity, makes the tragedy even more profound. It was as if fate itself had captured Sharon's last few moments of peace and frozen them in time, allowing the world to see just how quickly everything can change. There's a haunting innocence in the way Sharon's smile contrasts with the violence that would soon follow. It's as though she couldn't have known that the life she was living so fully was about to be shattered. The photo has become a powerful symbol of the fragility of life, a reminder that everything can change in the blink of an eye. Sharon, who had been looking forward to the arrival of her child, was just days away from bringing a new life into the world, a symbol of her hopes and dreams for the future. Yet, as she stood for that photo, the life she had so carefully built with her husband Roman Polanski was slipping through her fingers. What makes the situation even more chilling is that there had been no warning, no indication that such a tragedy could befall Sharon. Everything seemed so normal, she had no reason to suspect that her life was about to be stolen from her. And so as Sharon posed for this photograph, she was blissfully unaware that the final chapter of her life was already being written. She was living her final moments of peace, unknowingly standing at the edge of a tragedy so enormous that it would alter not only her own fate, but the course of Hollywood and American history forever. The sense of unease grows stronger as we look back on that photo. What did Sharon feel in those last moments? Was she aware of any sense of foreboding, or did she simply think that the evening would unfold just like every other evening before it? This lingering question haunts us, because it's impossible to truly know. And that's what makes this photo so powerful. It's a frozen moment in time that we can only imagine, one that leaves us to wonder if Sharon had any inkling of the horror that awaited her. The Manson family murders are one of the most infamous events in modern American history, but in those few hours before the tragedy struck, the world was still unaware of what was to come. Sharon's life, her career, and her dreams of motherhood were all within her grasp, yet the photo captured her in a moment of pure joy and innocence, completely unaware that the darkness of the world was about to close in. There's a painful irony in the juxtaposition of Sharon's carefree expression and the horror that would follow. In the days leading up to her death, Sharon had been preparing for a future she would never get to experience. She had been busy finishing her latest film, and she was planning for the arrival of her child with Roman Polanski. She was in the prime of her life, filled with hope and anticipation. The photo tells a story of a life that was full of promise, yet the tragic irony is that it is also the last memory of Sharon Tate, before everything changed. We can only imagine the sheer disbelief and shock of her family, friends and loved ones when they learned of her death just hours after this photo was taken. What were they thinking in the moments after hearing the news? Did they wish they could have somehow stopped what was coming, or did they simply try to make sense of the senselessness of it all? Sharon's death left a lasting scar on everyone who knew her, and this photo has come to symbolize the beauty of what was lost. Sharon Tate's life, though tragically short, had been filled with incredible potential. She had everything to live for: an exciting career, a loving husband, a child on the way, and yet in an instant it was all taken from her. The photo of her smiling, blissfully unaware of the horror that awaited her, only makes the tragedy harder to bear. What could have been, had Sharon lived? What might she have accomplished? What kind of person would she have become? These are the questions that linger in the minds of those who remember Sharon Tate, and they are questions that we will never have answers to. The haunting photo of Sharon, captured in her final hours, is a stark reminder of how quickly life can turn upside down. One moment, you are smiling for the camera, full of dreams and anticipation, and the next moment, your life can be ripped away in the most violent and unexpected way. Sharon's photo serves as a poignant symbol of the fragility of life, and it speaks to the human experience of having everything, only to lose it all in the blink of an eye. It's a powerful and haunting reminder of how much can change in such a short amount of time, and how the things we take for granted can be lost in an instant. For all that Sharon had yet to accomplish and experience, her image, captured just hours before her death, will forever remain a symbol of the life she could have lived, and the promise she left behind. As Sharon Tate smiled for the camera, blissfully unaware of the horror that was about to unfold, there was something unsettling in the air, something that no one could have predicted. The world outside that moment was filled with darkness, and yet Sharon's image captured a fleeting sense of joy, beauty, and hope. She was pregnant, looking forward to the arrival of her baby, and everything seemed so perfect. The world she had built with her husband, Roman Polanski, was one of dreams and aspirations, and Sharon had every reason to believe that her future was bright. But there, in that seemingly innocent moment, the photograph would be the last memory the world would have of her peaceful existence. It was almost like fate itself had intervened, freezing time and preserving this image just hours before her life would be violently taken from her. Sharon, the rising star in Hollywood, was on the brink of motherhood, and yet in the next few hours, everything she had worked for, everything she held dear, would be shattered beyond recognition. What could have possibly prepared her for what lay ahead? What could anyone have done to prevent the shocking tragedy that was about to take place? The most chilling part of the photograph is not just the serenity in her expression, but the way it highlights the cruel irony of life. In those few hours before the night turned into a bloodbath, Sharon Tate was living what appeared to be the perfect life: a loving marriage, a promising career, a child on the way, and yet the nightmare was already lurking in the shadows. The Manson family, a group of delusional individuals led by the infamous Charles Manson, had already made plans to carry out their horrific crime, and Sharon was one of their unsuspecting victims. The terror that would be unleashed that night had nothing to do with Sharon personally. She was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. It's impossible to fathom the immense sense of foreboding that must have hung in the air for Sharon's family and friends, as they went about their lives, completely unaware that their loved one's fate was sealed. The chilling part of this story is that no one saw it coming. Sharon didn't know, her friends didn't know, and most importantly, the world didn't know that the beautiful woman smiling in that photograph would soon become a symbol of a tragedy that would forever alter Hollywood's history. That image would forever carry with it the weight of the horror that followed, and yet in those moments no one had any inkling of the devastation that awaited her. It is the epitome of the fragility of life, how everything can change in a split second, and how everything Sharon had once known, her career, her happiness, and her future, was about to be torn away from her in the most violent and senseless way. It's almost impossible to reconcile the contrast between the happy, smiling woman in the photo and the brutal reality that would soon unfold. The tragedy that would become Sharon Tate's legacy was not just about her tragic death, but about what her life could have been. What would she have achieved had she been allowed to live? How many more films could she have made? How many lives could she have touched? And how many more years of happiness could she have shared with her family? These are questions that linger in the minds of everyone who reflects on Sharon Tate's life and death. The photo, captured in those final moments, forces us to confront the deep sadness that she was not given the chance to live out her dreams. It's haunting because it represents what was lost, not just for Sharon herself but for her loved ones, and for a generation that never had the chance to witness the full potential of her career. Sharon Tate was much more than just a tragic figure in the history of Hollywood. She was a woman with dreams, ambitions, and a bright future. In the photograph, she is unaware of the grim fate that awaits her, but for the rest of us, it stands as a constant reminder of how fleeting life can be. It makes us wonder, how often do we take our own moments of happiness for granted, never knowing that they might be the last peaceful moments we will have. For Sharon, those few hours before the night turned into a nightmare were all she had left. They were the last moments of her life before the world was irrevocably changed. And as the days passed, the tragedy of her death would slowly unfold for the world to witness. But in those moments, when the photo was taken, Sharon had no way of knowing that her world would be shattered in an instant. That photo, preserved forever in time, now holds a deep sense of melancholy and loss. Sharon's death was not just a moment of personal tragedy, it was a moment that affected an entire nation, an entire generation, and an entire world. And that haunting photograph serves as a symbol of everything that was taken from her, the life she could have lived, the dreams she could have achieved, and the family she could have raised. The woman in that photo, full of life and joy, is now forever captured as a memory, a victim of violence and senseless hatred. What happened to Sharon Tate was not just a loss of a beloved celebrity, it was the loss of potential, of a future that would never come to be. And every time we look at that photo, we are reminded of how fragile life really is. We can never know when our time will come, or what the future holds. Sharon Tate's smile, captured in those final hours, reminds us all to cherish the moments we have, for life can change in an instant, and we may never have a chance to look back. The haunting nature of that photograph doesn't just stem from its connection to Sharon's death, it's the way it freezes time, allowing us to feel the magnitude of what was lost, and to wonder what could have been. The photograph of Sharon Tate, smiling blissfully, unaware of the horror that awaited her, is a haunting reminder of how quickly life can change. Taken hours before one of the most shocking and brutal murders in Hollywood history, this image holds a story that no one could have predicted. Sharon Tate, a rising star with a bright future, was about to experience the unimaginable. The photo was a snapshot of joy, captured in a moment of pure peace. She was pregnant, and in the prime of her life, looking forward to the birth of her child and a future full of hope and dreams. Yet, as the world saw her in that image, it was the calm before the storm. This photo stands as a cruel juxtaposition to the tragedy that would soon unfold. Sharon Tate's life, full of promise, was about to be stolen from her in the most violent and senseless way imaginable. As the camera clicked, capturing the innocence of her smile, the shadow of danger loomed just beyond the frame. In those last moments, no one could have known that Sharon was unknowingly living the final hours of her life. The unsettling thing about the photograph is not just the contrast between her joy and the tragedy to come, but the fact that the world didn't see it coming. Sharon's life was stolen not just from her, but from all those who loved her, and the tragedy that followed left an indelible mark on everyone who heard about it. She wasn't just a celebrity, she was a young woman with a family, a future and dreams that would never be realized. The photo, taken just hours before the Manson family murders, became a symbol of what was lost. Sharon Tate's story was not just about a beautiful woman whose life was tragically cut short, it was about the dreams she never got to fulfill, the life she never got to live. The most heartbreaking part of the image is that it freezes a moment of happiness, an innocent smile, a radiant glow that would soon be replaced with the darkness of tragedy. The tragic irony of the photograph is the very fact that Sharon, so full of life and hope, had no idea what the future held. At that moment, she was preparing for the birth of her child, looking forward to the life she was building with her husband, Roman Polanski. But within hours, Sharon Tate would become one of the most high-profile victims of a brutal, senseless crime that shocked the world. The events of that night were not about a failed relationship or personal conflict. They were about madness and delusion, personified by the Manson family, whose actions were driven by an unhealthy obsession with chaos and violence. Sharon's name, along with her friends and those around her, became forever linked to a night of horror, a night that no one could have prepared for. What makes the image of Sharon Tate even more powerful is that it was taken at the peak of her life. She was on the verge of becoming a mother, of having it all. The world was watching her with admiration as she graced the silver screen, and the future looked incredibly bright, yet within hours the tragedy would strike. The juxtaposition of her beauty and serenity, captured just before the storm, adds to the eerie feeling surrounding the photo. It serves as a reminder of how fragile life can be, how everything can change in an instant. It is as if the photo, in all its tranquility, contains a hidden message, one that speaks to the fleeting nature of life and the unpredictability of fate. We see Sharon Tate as the world saw her, young, radiant, full of potential, but the tragedy that would soon unfold was far from anyone's mind. Sharon Tate's tragic death left the world reeling, and the photo serves as a chilling reminder of how easily it could have been avoided. In the blink of an eye, Sharon's life, along with the lives of others, was violently taken away. The unsettling part is that no one saw it coming. There were no warning signs, no indications that something so horrendous was about to happen. Sharon's last hours, immortalized in that photograph, remind us of how often we take life for granted, unaware that the future can change without notice. There is an odd sense of mystery surrounding Sharon Tate's final moments, and the photograph, that was taken just hours before her death, holds the key to that mystery. It forces us to question everything. How much control do we really have over our lives? How much of our fate is truly in our hands? Sharon Tate's smile, captured so beautifully in that last photo, leaves us with more questions than answers. It challenges our perception of time and the fragility of life, pushing us to consider what might have been. What if Sharon had lived? What would she have accomplished? What more could she have given to the world? These are questions that will forever remain unanswered, and the photograph, though beautiful, stands as a reminder of the loss and potential that was never realized. Sharon's story is not just about her tragic death, it's about what was taken from her, and from all of us. The haunting image of her smile, so full of life, serves as a poignant reminder of how precious our time is and how easily it can be stolen away. Sharon Tate's life was taken too soon, but her image, frozen in time, lives on as a tribute to the person she was, and the dreams she had yet to fulfill. The photograph is a haunting testament to the beauty and tragedy of her life, capturing the essence of who she was before the world was robbed of her. Her story is one of the many tragedies that remind us of the unpredictable nature of life, and how easily everything can change. It leaves us reflecting on our own lives, our own moments of happiness, and the uncertain future ahead. Sharon's photo, preserved for eternity, speaks to the fragility of life, and the loss of something beautiful that the world will never get to experience. It forces us to appreciate the moments we have, and to be mindful of how fleeting life can be, just as Sharon's was. The chilling nature of Sharon Tate's final days can be traced through every corner of the tragedy that unfolded just hours after her last photo was taken. As the image captured her smiling, glowing with the life and dreams she was so close to realizing, it was impossible for anyone who looked at it to predict the horrifying events that would follow. Sharon, a rising star in Hollywood, was just about to embark on a new chapter of her life, expecting a baby, married to famed director Roman Polanski, and enjoying the recognition she had longed for in her career. The photo itself radiated warmth and joy, showing Sharon in a moment of pure happiness, unaware of the darkness lurking just outside the frame. This beautiful image of innocence, now immortalized in history, serves as a stark contrast to the unimaginable violence that would claim her life later that same evening. The tragedy that would unfold was not just a murder, it was a senseless act of violence that would ripple through the lives of those closest to Sharon. The mystery of how someone so full of promise, so beloved, could be violently torn from the world is a question that still haunts many. Sharon's smile in that last photo would soon be replaced with the terror of an unspeakable crime that no one saw coming. The events of that night, the Manson family murders, have been studied, analyzed, and examined by countless people, yet the question still lingers: how could this have happened? Was it fate, coincidence, or a confluence of circumstances that led to that fateful night? The photograph of Sharon Tate, taken just hours before the murders, forces us to confront the randomness of life and death. It reminds us how fragile our existence is, how quickly things can go from peaceful to chaotic, and how little control we actually have over our destinies. When we look at Sharon's photo, we are confronted with the tragedy of unfulfilled potential. She wasn't just an actress or a famous name, she was a young woman with a future, a wife, a mother-to-be, and someone who had just begun to make her mark on the world. That future was cut brutally short, leaving behind a hole not just in the entertainment industry, but in the lives of those who loved her. Sharon Tate's image was a representation of innocence, happiness, and possibility. It was a moment frozen in time, capturing the essence of a young woman who was just beginning to realize her dreams. And then with one horrifying act of violence, all of that was taken away. The contrast between the beauty and serenity of the photo and the brutality that followed is what makes Sharon's story so devastating. The chilling reality is that her life was snatched away before she could fully live it. The haunting nature of this photograph lies not only in the peaceful smile Sharon wore, but in the tragic irony of it. In that moment, she had no idea that her life was about to be extinguished. The photo is like a final message from Sharon herself, a testament to the joy she once felt before her life was violently interrupted. It forces us to reflect on how unpredictable life can be, and how easily everything can change in an instant. Sharon's story is not just about her death, it is about what was lost, the dreams she would never get to fulfill, the moments she would never share with her child, and the future she would never have. The photo with Sharon radiating warmth and happiness becomes a painful reminder of all the potential that was taken from her in an unspeakable act of violence. The question still lingers: what would Sharon Tate have accomplished if she had lived? What would she have contributed to the world of cinema? What would her life as a mother have looked like? These are questions that remain unanswered, and they will forever be tied to that photograph, the image of a woman full of life and possibility, unaware that her time was running out. As we gaze at the photo, we are reminded of the fragility of life, the fact that tomorrow is never guaranteed, and that one moment of peace and happiness can be taken away in the blink of an eye. Sharon's life was not just lost to a heinous crime, but to the loss of so much more. It wasn't just a tragic death, it was the untold potential that vanished with her. The photo taken just hours before the tragedy is a stark reminder that life is unpredictable, that death can come for us when we least expect it, and that we are not always in control of our own fate. Sharon Tate's story lives on through this image, a snapshot of a young woman who had so much more to give, whose light was extinguished before it could shine fully. That haunting photograph remains a testament to her memory, a chilling symbol of how close we all are to the edge of the unknown. It forces us to appreciate the fleeting moments we have, to understand that life can change without warning, and to cherish every second, because we never know when it might be our last. Sharon's life was taken from her, but her image, her memory, and the legacy of her potential will live on forever. The haunting photo of Sharon Tate is a reminder that life is fragile, that it can all change in an instant, and that we should never take our time on this earth for granted. It stands as a symbol of what was lost, a tribute to the young woman whose story was cut tragically short, and a reminder of how easily things can slip away. Even after all these years, the last moments of Sharon Tate's life continue to echo in the hearts and minds of people who never even met her, as if the world still hasn't made peace with the loss of someone so full of light and promise. The story didn't just end with her death, it left behind a trail of pain, questions, and a strange, heavy silence that no one could quite break. Everyone who looked at her haunting final photo saw more than just a woman smiling. They saw a mystery, a fear, a sadness that couldn't be explained. What was she thinking in that last photo? Did she sense anything strange? Was there something in the air that night that told her things were about to change? The house, so quiet and full of laughter during the day, turned into a place of horror as the sun set. Behind its peaceful walls, something dark was getting closer, something she could never have imagined. And yet she walked through her last hours as though it were just another day. She probably spoke about baby names, or what movie she might do next, or how she missed Roman while he was away working. Her world was still whole in her eyes, but we, looking back, know that it was seconds away from shattering. That's the most painful part. The photo shows her full of life, and we, knowing what's coming, feel like we're frozen in time, shouting into the past to warn her, even though we know it's useless. And the people who knew her, who loved her, they were left with that same feeling. Regret, helplessness. If only someone had stayed. If only someone had noticed. If only the signs had been clearer. But life doesn't work like that. The night came like any other, calm and quiet, and then suddenly it wasn't. What happened to Sharon and the others in that house was beyond cruel. It wasn't just a crime, it was a nightmare that no one could wake from. The world watched as the news broke, stunned, confused, broken-hearted. And in the middle of it all, that photo began to circulate. A beautiful woman, hours from death, caught in a moment that would outlive her. That image didn't just tell the story of what was lost. It became a symbol of how fast joy can turn into horror, how close danger can live beside innocence. For the people left behind, her family, friends, Roman, it became impossible to forget. Every year on the anniversary, they would remember her laugh, her kindness, the way she lit up a room, and they would also remember the screams, the headlines, the nightmare that took her away. That contrast, that deep wound between who she was and what happened to her, became something too heavy to carry, but too sacred to forget. People began to ask bigger questions. How did this happen? What led those people to commit such violence? How could such evil come into the life of someone so good? And while answers came, trials happened, and names were known, the real truth, why Sharon was never really answered. The haunting part isn't just the crime, it's the way she didn't even know she was a part of history in her last hours. She was just Sharon, happy, glowing, in love, waiting for her baby. And yet, now when people talk about her, they don't always remember the movies or the laughter. They remember the end. That's the cruelest twist of all. Her story, which should have been about rising stardom, about love and family, became known for its final page. And that's why people return to that last photo again and again. It's like trying to hold on to the real her, the one before the darkness came. But even that photo now feels heavy. It carries a warning, a sadness, a truth we don't like to face. That life is unpredictable, that safety is never certain, that sometimes the world takes away the very people it should protect. But maybe that's also why Sharon's memory continues to shine. Because despite how her life ended, she is remembered with love. Her light hasn't gone out. In fact, in some strange way, it's brighter. Her story continues to touch people, to remind them of how precious life is, how quickly things can change, and how we must hold on tightly to those we love. And maybe that's what that photo is really for, not just to haunt us, but to remind us that behind every smile is a story. Behind every moment is a future that can shift without warning. Sharon's life, though short, mattered. Her death wasn't just a tragedy. It was a lesson, a memory, a name that still echoes in the world. And though she's gone, that final image ensures she's never forgotten.